everybody, I'm Brittany Lewis with Forbes Breaking News. Joining me now is co-founder and president of Real Clear Politics, Tom Bevan. Tom, thanks for coming back on once again.
Hi, Brittany.
Hi. So we are sitting right now less than 5 months away from Election Day, and some startling key swing state polls just came in, and I would love to get your reaction. This is a poll from Emerson College and The Hill, and it found that Donald Trump is beating President Joe Biden in some key swing states like Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin, and is tied in Minnesota. What's your reaction?
Well, I actually talked to Spencer Kimball, the director of polling at Emerson College, earlier today when those polls came out and just after they came out. And we talked about, they did their last survey a couple of months ago. And in the interim, you had seen obviously Donald Trump's conviction in New York on 34 felony counts and some other events, going on in the Middle East, et cetera. And he said the numbers basically didn't move. I mean, this race is remarkably stable, and we've seen that in most of the swing state data and most of the national data as well. Donald Trump is ahead in all of these swing states. The closest one is Wisconsin, where he's ahead by 0.1%. It's about as close to being tied as you could possibly get, and about half a point in Michigan. But beyond that, Trump's lead in Pennsylvania is about 2.3% in our average, and in Arizona, Nevada, Georgia, North Carolina, it's approaching 5%. So I think these Emerson polls just confirm that Trump has a small but stable lead in the 6 or 7 states where this race is going to be decided, and it really hasn't moved that much over the last couple of months, and actually even going all the way back to November of last year.
And he is now a convicted felon, and that has had time to bake into voters' minds. That verdict came out a month ago. Are you surprised that hasn't really changed the numbers that much?
No, not really. I mean, honestly, this was something that people have very well-formed opinions about Donald Trump. His supporters never thought this case should have been brought. They thought it was illegitimate. And obviously, Democrats thought it was completely legitimate and assumed he was guilty and were happy that he was guilty. And independents were split in the middle. And I think a lot of the coverage, the public, this was sort of baked into their perception of this race. And so it wasn't shocking to me when the verdict came out and it really didn't move the needle very much at all. It might have softened Trump's support for a little bit. And you saw this in the betting odds, which we keep track of at Real Clear Politics. But Trump basically bounced right back in the betting odds. And so, again, this race is remarkably stable despite all of the noise that's surrounding it.
One of the most interesting numbers in those key swing states is that Biden and Trump are tied in Minnesota. And Frank Luntz, famous pollster, he reacted to that today, and he said this, quote, "I don't think the media understands exactly what's going on right now when it comes to Minnesota." A, do you agree? And B, what do you think the media is missing here when it comes to this polling?
So Minnesota in 2016 was one of those states, and people don't remember this, but Hillary Clinton only won it by about 1.5 points. It was really, really close. None of the campaigns visited. It completely flew under the radar. In 2020, it was the epicenter of George Floyd, and it really wasn't that close. But this is much more like a 2016 scenario, where we've got 2 polls just in the last 6 weeks showing this race very, very close. Emerson has it tied. Survey USA has Biden up 2 points there. And I think, what's happening in Minnesota is what happened in Wisconsin in 2016 and other parts of the upper Midwest, where the rural voters who used to vote Democrat have shifted heavily toward Trump, while, sort of the urban voters and suburban voters have shifted toward Biden. But the suburban vote, I think what's going on is a little bit softer for Joe Biden this time, and that's what's making this race so competitive in the state of Minnesota. I would also add, Brittany, another state that has basically expanded the map is Virginia. We've had a couple polls come out in Virginia showing that race really, really competitive this time around. That wasn't a competitive state in 2016 or 2020, and that just goes to show, I think, that Biden is more vulnerable and Trump is in a much stronger position this time around than he was 4 years ago.
I talked to someone from polling in Roanoke College, and he said Virginia could very much be in play this election. Do you agree, and why is that?
I do. Again, Democrats' strength in Virginia all comes from the northern suburbs, right? Just outside of DC. And if that suburban vote is soft, and we've seen this repeatedly, there was just a piece in the New York Times this morning talking about the gender gap and how over the last, I think they did an analysis of 30 polls taken over the last 6 months and found that Joe Biden's support among women was 5 points lower now than it was at this point in 2020. A lot of those voters, in Northern Virginia, if that vote for Biden is soft and doesn't come out, that state is a state that could very well be in play, and Trump could very well win it. Now, the question is, will those voters get motivated? When push comes to shove on November 5th, are they going to turn out and vote for Joe Biden? If they do, he'll win that state probably pretty handily. But that's one of those things that we won't know until the day after the election.
I do want to talk about something that voters are looking forward to in the near future, and that is the first presidential debate. I want to read some of the rules and get your thoughts on them. It's in June. It's a little earlier this year, June 27th, so 1 week from today. It's at 9 p.m. It'll be 90 minutes long, 2 commercial breaks with no studio audience. Both Trump and Biden will be standing. Their mics will be muted except when it's their turn to speak, and they don't get any notes or props. Instead, a pen, a notepad, and then a bottle of water. What are your thoughts on the rules here and the debate switch up?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of speculation as, this rule is going to favor Trump and this rule is going to favor Biden. I'm not sure any of that stuff is going to matter at the end. I mean, this is going to be a very high stakes moment in the campaign. There's no question about it. And I know they scheduled 2 debates. There's another one scheduled for September 10th, but I honestly think the second one may not happen, depending on what goes down in Atlanta on Thursday. Look, Biden, the expectations for Biden are exceedingly low. And so for that reason, I think he probably has a good chance of meeting or exceeding them. Donald Trump, he's right now, I think he's ahead in this race. And the question that a lot of his supporters, I see them asking is, why did he agree to do this? Why did he agree to A, debate Joe Biden, and B, do it in a format where he's submitting himself to the fake news media and the media that he can't stand, getting quizzed by Jake Tapper and Dana Bash of CNN. So we'll see what happens in this debate, but I do think it is going to be one of the bigger moments. Whether it fundamentally shifts the way this race is being viewed by the public remains to be seen.
Do you think this could be a State of the Union moment where the stakes were low for Biden? Essentially, it was get out there and say a speech, and then he did that, pass with flying colors, and that gave him a boost in the polls. Do you think we could see that a post-debate surge for Biden?
Sure. I mean, the problem for Joe Biden with that is that it's short-lived. I mean, his State of the Union, he did get a bump, and then we see a couple of videos of him that he looks frail, he looks, lost or whatever. And it sort of, the questions come right back. And he's facing a lot of those questions now based on some of these videos that have been going around. So if he has a good debate next Thursday, will it put those questions to rest? For the time being, yes, until another video comes out, and then it'll start all back up again. Because the one thing that he really has no control over in this campaign is the question of age. And it's something that's only going to get worse, not going to get better. And that's what Democrats are really sort of grappling with as they look at Joe Biden as their nominee is some have speculated this debate was being happening this early because it'll be a test to see whether they want him to go the distance or not, or whether they try and orchestrate some break glass in case of emergency kind of moment. So I think it's going to be a big night for him, but I'm not sure that even if he has a good night, that's going to put all these questions to rest for the rest of the campaign.
Do you think there's anything that Joe Biden could do to assuage voters of the age concern? Because I can remember, I wasn't alive then, but Ronald Reagan in a debate assuaging voters by saying, hey, I know that my opponent here is younger, and it was a really funny moment during the debate. Does Joe Biden have the opportunity to do that at all?
I mean, could he use self-deprecating humor to try and disarm and deflect the issue? I guess he could. But I don't think he has Reagan's sort of skill or charm in that regard. and B, I mean, remember, Joe Biden's what? I think Reagan left office when he was 76 or 77. Joe Biden's 81 right now, and so it's kind of a different. It's not a complete apples to apples comparison. So I don't know exactly if that would be something that would work for him. But he may in fact try it. I mean, he's done some of that stuff in the past, but it hasn't really done much in terms of assuaging voter concerns.
CNN announced today that Biden did win a coin flip, so he got to pick what podium he was at. He's at the right side, and that means that Trump gets to go last. He has the last word in closing statements. Do you think that's going to podium side or last word be a big deal in this debate at all? What are your thoughts?
I mean, not really. Although, if I won the coin toss, I'd rather have the last word than the podium side. I don't understand why that would be an advantage or disadvantage. I would much rather have the last word to viewers than let Donald Trump have the last word to viewers. So maybe that's a slight advantage for Trump. But again, I think, these debates, most people they're gonna see highlights of it. I'm not sure. I suspect this one will actually have a decent viewership. But certainly, I think that the first 30 minutes are the most crucial. There'll be very few people who sort of watch all the way till the very last word, and so whatever points I think are going to be scored early by one of the two candidates.
I do now want to move on and talk about Donald Trump's VP shortlist. There's 8 names on it. Senators Tim Scott, J.D. Vance, Tom Cotton, and Marco Rubio. Representatives Elise Stefanik and Byron Donalds. North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum, and former HUD Secretary Ben Carson. What are your thoughts on this list?
Look, I don't know. I mean, you can argue a case for each one, I think. And certainly we've seen that happening in the media. Some people had said, look, I think Donald Trump needs to pick a woman. There's only, I think, one woman on that list. You have Tim Scott was originally mentioned as one. He's not really on that list anymore. Ben Carson is. So I think we'll have to wait and see. I mean, I think the odds-on favorite would probably be Marco Rubio, even though there's that issue that they're both from Florida and Rubio would have to establish a residence somewhere else, which I think would be not a huge problem. But certainly the flavor of the month or week or whatever we're calling it is J.D. Vance. His name has been everywhere, and he's been getting a lot of buzz. And there was this straw poll that was taken at the Turning Point Action event in Detroit that Trump was just at earlier this week. And J.D. Vance was the winner by it was 43% wanted J.D. Vance. So he has strong support within the sort of, rank and file base of the party. But ultimately, Donald Trump's going to pick who he's going to pick. And even the people who are closest to him aren't going to have a clue who it is until he makes his announcement, which will probably come, if Trump is true to form, via Twitter. And we'll all learn about it at the same time.
As we know, there's a block of never Trump voters. Do you think the right vice presidential pick could persuade those types of voters or independent voters to maybe hold their nose and vote for Trump?
No, I don't think, as far as never Trump voters, I mean, they're never Trump for a reason, and he's at the top of the ticket. And I don't think that's going to, regardless of who he picks, that's not going to change their opinion of him and their desire to vote against him. Could it matter with some independent voters? Perhaps. I mean, traditionally, though, vice presidential picks don't have a ton of people don't go to the polls to vote for vice president. Now, you could argue this is a different situation because we have the 2 oldest candidates we've ever had, and therefore it takes on an increased importance of if something were to happen to Trump or Biden, people are going to be looking harder at who would replace them. But at the end of the day, I don't know that a vice presidential pick is going to sway a whole lot of undecided or independent voters in Trump's direction.
When you look at all of these numbers as a whole, I know a lot can happen, obviously, between now and Election Day, and they will shake up after the presidential debate next week. But are you looking for any moments between now and then?
I mean, the conventions obviously are going to happen pretty soon, and those provide opportunities for good and for bad, depending on how things go. Um, but listen, I think this race is almost fully formed now, and the things that are going to happen, the debate, the conventions, these things that are going to happen between now and election day, they're known. In some ways, they're sort of set pieces. They're not going to be dramatic, or I mean, what's unknown is, could there be something between now and election day, a terror attack, something in the Middle East, something, whatever, natural disaster, tornado, earthquake, flood, whatever, where, Biden could be really presidential, like, Obama was with Sandy or something like that. Those are the unknown events that can intervene and really shift dramatically people's perceptions, what they think is important, like COVID did in 2020. That kind of thing could really affect, and those are simply the surprises that we don't know about that are left in this campaign. And I suspect there will be at least one or two between now and then, if not more.
Well, as everything shakes out, I hope you come back on and join me again, break it down. Tom, Bevan, thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Brittany. Appreciate it.